Okay, so this is our 2022. Today is 02/22/2022. Have y'all noticed that? If you're into numbers, I think that stuff's so cool. Anyway, this is our Head to the Hill panel. And I want to make sure that we know who's in the room, and then we've got several people on our Zoom, and I'll start by introducing myself. Met Henry earlier. I'm Susan McCracken. I am here in the Career Development Center. I'm the Director of Career Development and Economic Engagement, and I'm super excited. I love doing this panel. My goal is to retire and be an intern in DC, like all of these folks did, which I never got a chance to do, mainly because I wasn't nearly as organized and on the ball as they are, or as you are, because you're here tonight. So let's just go around the room. If y'all will introduce yourselves. And Bailey, you want to come join us?
I have a meeting in a few minutes, but yeah.
Well, we got some of your old buds here.
Who are my old buds? Oh, Michael. Oh, hey, Michael.
And Artist here.
Oh, hey, Artist here. Oh,
Hey, Bailey.
How are y'all?
Good. Yourself?
Well, oh, busy. You know that. I need to tell you that.
Oh,
busy. How are y'all? Doing good though? Yeah.
Oh, Susan, I think your camera froze.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, but you're back now.
Is it back now?
Yeah.
Okay, it's the owl, and I really don't know what to do with it if it freezes. So, but anyway, so do you want to hang out for a few minutes?
Actually, I gotta go prep for Senate tonight. but
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Okay.
thanks for dropping in.
Yep. Bye. Nice to see y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't miss those days.
So Henry, you're first year?
Yeah, I'm a first-year student at Appalachian State. I'm majoring in political science with a focus on American government.
Okay.
I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay, great. And how's the sound for y'all? Can y'all hear that pretty well? Okay, great.
Oh, my name is Cindy. I'm a general mathematics major with don't know my concentration yet, but trying to figure
Awesome.
that out. I'm a first year, but I came in as an early college student, so I'm technically a junior.
Okay,
So I don't know.
awesome. So she's got some commonalities with you, Kadima, kind of that analytical mind person. Yeah, great. And
My name is Chris Merritt. I guess I'm technically a junior. I'm a communication journalism major with a minor in business. So.
great. Well, let me tell these folks about two things before they disappear here. Tomorrow, this is our career fair week. Oh, and all of y'all who are on Zoom, you can see we're in our new space. So Michael and Artist here, this was under construction last year, and others, y'all haven't seen it yet. We're now in the student union. And tomorrow we have Career Connect sort of general majors. So y'all may want to come to that. Thursday is more like building science design, but we have a networking event. This is about Career Connect, and we have a networking event in here tomorrow from 5 until 6:30. And it'll be set up just like we are now, except we won't have people on TV. And you're welcome to come, and you don't have to sign up. Okay, so I'm going to sit down and let you guys, you folks go ahead and introduce yourselves. I'll just let y'all go in whatever order. I do have some questions and that I prepared off of what I sent you. And we'll jump into those in a few minutes, and I'll try to keep an eye on time because y'all got great experience that I want to share with everyone. So I don't know, you only just go alphabetically by first name to introduce yourself. Does that make sense? That might be easy, and then y'all know how to go. So Artist here, you're first.
Sweet. Hey all, my name is Ardashir. I graduated App State last May, so 2021. I'm pretty new to Capitol Hill. I graduated with a general mathematics major with a concentration in criminal justice and political science. So shout out to the math majors in the room.
All right, we'll see how well y'all do with the alphabet.
Okay, that's me. Wow, okay. Okay, my bad. Hi, everybody. My name is Kadima. I graduated AppState class of 2018. I've been living up here in the DMV area for the last 3 years, literally since I graduated. So it's almost 4 years now. Yeah. And I was double major in finance and economics.
Great, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Madeline. I graduated Appalachian in 2017. I was a political science major. I focused in American politics and minored in gender, women, and sexuality studies. I moved to DC right after graduation, after interning the summer before, and worked at the Human Rights Campaign for 4 years. And then I recently just moved to Los Angeles a couple months ago. So happy to be here.
Thanks, Madeline.
My name is Michael Davis, and I was also a 2021 grad like Ardashir. I was an American politics, political science, and econ double major. And like Ardashir, we both, pilgrimaged to the Hill after graduating as interns. And now I'm a legislative assistant on the Committee on Education and Labor.
Great, thank you, Michael. Glad you made it back safely.
Hey y'all, I'm Tommy Maddox. I graduated in 2015, the oldie of the group. I was also a political science major, English minor, also came through SGA and all that, but also made the pilgrimage to Capitol Hill in 2015, the summer of, and almost 7 years later, I am still here in DC. So happy to be here.
Great, great. And we had another student join us. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Sabrina Hess. I'm an English major concentrating in professional writing and minor in communications, and I'm excited to be here.
Okay, great. And before y'all leave, there is an opportunity to work with the Friends, I can never remember, the Friends Committee on National Legislation, which Tommy Wren did. Madeline, right? Tommy worked there.
Yeah, Tommy Wren did. Mhm.
Yeah, so we've had a connection there, and I'll share that with y'all, and I'll be happy to send it to you as well. So there's a lot going on. So let's go ahead and jump in. Every single one of you, I think, started out not in a full-time job in DC and sort of worked your way through the ropes. So my first question is, and this is for everybody, is just tell us how you got your foot in the door and maybe one piece of advice you would have for the folks who are here with us on campus.
I'll start because I definitely did the interning during the day, unpaid internship, waited tables at night. Honestly, persistence gets you so far. If you just hold on and like you work hard and prove yourself. I look back, I still think back to those times where I was waiting tables at night and wondering when I'd get my official paid gig. But I promise you, persistence and grit will get you pretty far in DC.
I can definitely second that, because when I first moved up here, it was really the first thing I thought was just like apply, because that's what I had to do. And I was introduced to DC through an internship program called the Marion Drain Scholars Program. Susan probably told you guys about that by now, but that's definitely a really good program to get into if you can, because they brought us up here to DC. And that was the first time that I actually got to see Capitol Hill, and I went into offices of the North Carolina representatives at the time. And that was like my way to be like, okay, I want to do this, I want to come back here. And from there, I just really applied all that, literally nonstop. And it was just the grace of this one person that was like, I really like your resume, I'm going to bring you up here. And that's how I ended up in my internship. And I did the same thing Tom did. I was waiting tables because they weren't paying me. So I was waiting tables at night, and I did that for almost a year. Sleeping with my aunt on her daybed until I actually found my full-time position.
And just to follow up on the Miriam Graham Drains internship program, what year did you say you were?
I'm a sophomore.
Sophomore. Okay, this is perfect for y'all. So there are all kinds of internships with state government, and that is what Kadima did. The one she did was through the UNC system office of all the UNC campuses, but there are many state internship jobs. And Michael, well, I'm just going to go ahead and skip to you, Michael, because you did one of those. Maybe if you could speak about that, and then then get back to the question of how you got the foot in the door. But that was part of the experience you had.
Yeah, I'll try to not go on too much of a tangent, but no, I know that was the summer after COVID first started. So I think summer 2020. And I had wanted to go to DC and do another internship because I had previously interned for Senator Burr, and everything was closed down and canceled. And so I did a virtual internship with the NC Equal Access to Justice Commission, and actually like could still keep in touch with some of the people that I like worked with. It was a completely different environment. It was people that like, you know, obviously I'm working on Capitol Hill. I'm not doing pro bono legal work now or anything like that. But I think just, you know, it's all like, I think just, you know, the legal and political network within North Carolina and DC, you know, is definitely close. And for me, I had applied for probably like, if there was a political something job in North Carolina or DC, like I definitely like I had applied for it. And you know, this was like when I graduated in May, you know, the job market exactly wasn't, you know, the best in the world. So I moved up here and was doing that because I had told myself, you know, maybe I can have the best of both worlds and try and apply for jobs in North Carolina and DC. That did not work out. So I just moved up here without an internship and just did like a 3-month temporary lease. And my current roommate and former person I interned with, I had like kind of reconnected with him, and I was actually his intern for a month until I found my job. So I think it's definitely like a lot of like until I got that like first break, there was definitely like lots of like probably like 50, 60 job applications of 50, 60 failures until I got that one break. So I could go on, but I'll let someone else.
Okay, great.
One more thing I want to add too is the power of the AppState connection. When I got the internship with Senator Carper, they said that something that stood out to them was Boone, North Carolina, because Senator Carper of Delaware's wife is from Boone, North Carolina. And then when I got the internship with Senator Cantwell, it's because Sarah Bolton, another AppState alum who was, at the time was ranked like one of the most powerful female staffers on the Hill, had graduated from AppState, worked for Patty Murray, Washington delegation. So it's just funny how it always goes back to AppState.
Artist here, Madeline, go ahead.
Yeah, I can jump in too. I mean, again, the power of AppState, when I interned at the Human Rights Campaign, which is an LGBTQ nonprofit in DC, their at the time chief of staff, but now interim president, Joni Madison, is an Appalachian State alum too. So there's a ton of App people. But yeah, I mean, I think if possible, I would really encourage summer internships because I mean, DC is just known for this like herd of summer interns coming in. And there's so many summer programs that I think really help you get your foot in the door. So I did that. And then there also are a lot of rich Capitol Hill families who need babysitters, and dog walkers, and everything else, which I definitely did my fair share of while doing an unpaid internship that then helped me get a job. So yeah, definitely look in the summer. And Susan was a huge help for that.
I think the one thing I would say is, well, one is to just rely on those connections again. Even if it's a very small connection, people on the Hill are generally willing to help. And that's how I ended up here. I reached out to a very old friend that I hadn't talked to in probably 4 years. And through that conversation, ended up finding an internship. But the one other thing I would advocate for is to get some form of work experience before coming to the Hill. I applied for 2 cycles of internships and got denied. And the common feedback was that I was a new graduate without relevant work experience. So I went and did campaign work all summer, made connections, talked to people on the Hill. And then when I started applying for fall jobs, it was much easier to get my foot into the door. So getting some form of campaign work or nonprofit work, like the rest of the folks on the panel have said, is really helpful as well.
Great, thank you. And I didn't go through all of y'all's positions because I shared y'all, well, did I? Yeah, I did, in Handshake. You have their LinkedIn profiles, but I think the really neat thing is that you all are in lots of different places. And some of you started out kind of in that political, sort of that straight on the Hill, some of you are still there, but you managed to move into other places. So one thing I'm curious about that I'd like to get your thoughts on is, do you have to physically be in DC to get a job there? Or is it really possible to do that from 8 hours away, 6.5 hours away in Boone?
It's possible. It's hard. It's not easy to do, but it is possible. Because when I found my internship up here, I still had a North Carolina address. And literally everyone that called me back, they were like, do you live in the area? And I'm like, no, not yet. But like, you know, that's the goal. And that's when you kind of like basically sell yourself in that moment. So it's hard to do, but it's not impossible. They're just going to ask more questions, basically.
My completely honest and transparent answer is pretty much the same thing. It's much more difficult with the North Carolina address. What I ended up doing for my internship applications was putting my address as my second or third cousin who lives in DC's address. And I had an arrangement with them that if I got something and needed to start in a week, that I could crash on their couch until I found a place. I think people who hire you really want to know that you can start quickly. I thought that was a bit of an over-exaggeration when I was applying, and for the job I just recently started, I was asked to start the day after I got my offer. So a lot of offices move quick, so be ready to be up here.
Wow, that is really fast.
I think if you're looking, I'm not speaking for Hill Experience, but I think a lot of nonprofit and advocacy groups are probably a little bit more lenient after COVID or with COVID of, you know, working maybe a month or two remote and then coming to the area. So if you are interested in nonprofit advocacy work, I would think that that's probably a little bit more flexible than, you know, interning on the Hill at this point with COVID. But yeah, it's always, and also something that you all have that I don't think I really had or did in college was LinkedIn. And I already got so many connection requests from people, I guess, who had registered for this event. So keep doing that and message your AppState people on LinkedIn and people who live in DC through LinkedIn, and just be transparent and ask them these questions, and they'll, you know, be able to help you out and give you an honest answer too.
Yeah, I have some. Oh, wait, sorry.
No, go ahead, Michael.
Oh, sorry. It's 2 years and we'll speak over each other. But no, I'll kind of piggyback off what Ardeshir said. I think it definitely, like on the Hill, I think it's definitely like shorter turnaround. Off the Hill, like has a normal HR, so things move slower. And definitely like party on the Hill. Republicans, you know, working person, Democrats, kind of. It's kind of hit or miss, and there's more flexibility. I just think, I don't know, like I always felt bad in some of my interviews that like I had to like say like that. I don't know, like whether it's right or not, the fact that you're in DC is like taken as an indicator that you're a serious candidate. So take with that what you will.
Can y'all speak a little bit about things that, and this kind of goes to the networking and marketability and, you know, and you've already talked about it. I do think it's interesting. I was thinking about LinkedIn recently. Like I would say, since several of y'all have graduated, if you graduated even 3 or 4 years ago, LinkedIn, I think, was still really like more for the business people, the business world. Like if you were finance, but if you were in, the liberal arts or in nonprofits, like where Madeline is, that wasn't really that big of a deal. But I think especially since COVID, LinkedIn is kind of on steroids. It really seems to be an amazing connection. And you can, you know, just look at, you know, you can do a search through LinkedIn of who has an AppState connection and is in the DC geographic area. And then you can just go through and connect with people. But so I'm glad you mentioned that, Madeline. But would y'all talk a little bit about what you think, especially when you think about any experiences you had here as a student, that, and I think somebody already, maybe Ardeshir, it was you, I can't remember, somebody mentioned about having work experience, but can you talk about sort of what experiences you had here that made you marketable and that you really sort of promoted during the time that you were looking for jobs and internships?
I mean, I can't say enough about my experience as student government, especially in SGA cabinet. Susan, obviously that's where you and I met and bonded as our counterparts. I think just making those connections and any type of leadership role, honestly, on campus, whether it be like Greek life, any of that, really shows that you're able to multitask and juggle a bunch of things at once. But I think it also just kind of shows pride for the school, and you can talk about App State, and I don't know, as long as you have a good story to tell, I think that goes a long way.
I also applied to basically every like scholarship that came through the political science department. I applied to go to conferences. I did projects with Dr. Ardwin and Dr. Newmark as much as possible, because having them as references, and then also having on your resume that you attended the annual political science conference in Chicago, or you were the recipient of, whatever scholarship through the political science department, I think is what I really talked about in a lot of my internship interviews, other than, having an on-campus job. But those were actually the relevant experience that people were looking for, and showed that I was a viable candidate.
And competitive.
Through my interview processes, the two most common things that were asked of me were about my experience as an RA, and then my experience in the math field and how that connects to politics. So I'd say those were two things that really stuck out. They were interested in my work as an RA and similar roles, I would say, in general, because I was working in sort of like crisis management, long hours. I used to work 24-hour shifts and was on call. And for the current job I'm in, I also work similarly long days on call a lot. So that was really something they were interested in. And then for the math degree, I think it just stands out because most people who come to DC have a political science major, which is great because I wish I did at some points, just not having as much knowledge in that field. But math really sticks out because there's no clear line in a lot of people's minds. So they ask about it, and then you can elaborate and sort of sell yourself even more. So.
Anybody else want to add anything to that?
I'll just add, I can add something really fast. Just think having like at least like some sort of like tangible experience. Like for internship, like people are kind of more willing to like understand like this is your first time. But if you're like trying to go for a job, I know like that, like having a previous internship kind of like, because on at least like having hired interns in the past, like it's definitely helpful when someone kind of like, even like just little stuff, like they know where the office building is, they know where the different stuff is, and it like kind of helps you like cement you as like someone that they want to like bring on full time.
Well, let me take, go ahead, Kadima, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I was super involved with like multicultural student development at MPHC. And then I was a Walker College Business Honors student. So I had talked about that a lot. And that was my main connection with App, especially when I was talking about my internship, like interviews and stuff like that.
So I want to take a break there. I have questions, but I want to know what questions y'all have, and we'll take a few minutes and see what we have from the floor. Or anything you want to share. You're like, okay, I am a math major and I'm kind of curious about, like, I don't want to work in politics. I want to work for the NSF. Any types of things that y'all might have questions about.
I did want to start. What year at App State did you kind of get the idea that you wanted to be in Washington? You wanted to be involved in the political field, regardless of your major, whatever you were looking at. What instigated that?
Jump in. I went to DC for my internship during the 2016 election, which is what kicked off my wanting to be in DC, which now I'm like, why did I want to be in DC during that? Probably like not the best idea. But that's really why I wanted to go into the LGBTQ nonprofit space, because it was during this insane time in DC during the election and the end of Obama's presidency. So I wanted to get there during that time and be involved with HRC during that election.
Yes.
I think for me, it didn't really click that I wanted to be in DC until beginning of second semester senior year. For the most part, through undergrad, I was pursuing different degrees. I started as a physics major and wanted to go into meteorology, and just was completely separated from DC and politics. And then personal interests just sort of drove me to change my mind. And I had great advisors who helped me with course loads and figuring out what would help. But it really didn't come together until I don't think I put my first internship application in until March of senior year.
And what changed for you, Ardashir? Because I remember talking to you about maybe going to grad school.
I think grad school is still on the table for me. So I think what changed was that I just wanted to get some more hands-on experience. I had started talking to people who had worked on the Hill, lots of bantering with Michael in the SGA office, and I realized that I could benefit from being up here for a couple years before I went to grad school, so I could sort of take more steps to figure out what I wanted to specialize in grad school.
Anybody else want to add, or we'll see what other questions?
I have a pretty unique story. So before I went to App, I spent a few years performing at Disney. And it was during the 2012 election. And I felt so out of touch. And I usually was on top of, my stuff when it comes to politics and news of the day. And when the 2012 election happened, and I wanted to go back to school at that point, but also wanted to, become more involved, especially since LGBT issues were obviously on the plate that year as well, as always. And so that really instilled in me the drive to go back to school, and then being an App, and there were so many, resources for whether it be internships, or when I was on cabinet for student government, I was a part of the Association of Student Governments, and we did a trip to DC and met with senators and members of Congress and the House. And I think just kind of seeing up close and the advocacy side made me want to be a part of it.
And Kadima, you were going to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, for me, it was kind of doing that internship with Marion Drain Scholars Program in summer of 2017. So that was like coming into my senior year. That's when I really realized that I wanted to be up here in the DC area and somehow get involved with government.
And I'm gonna take a stab and answer for Michael. Michael was like, I am going to DC, and if I have to sleep on a bench, I'm gonna be there. Despite all of my attempts to get him to look at other things. So anything else you want to add, Michael?
I interviewed for jobs in North Carolina and local things, but they didn't work out. So I guess it was just meant to be in DC.
I know. So what else do we have that we want to ask?
Yeah, I'd really be interested to know if there's anything specific that you recommend that we kind of did now that maybe you didn't know while you were at, that you think really would help you with DC, or maybe you learned later on that you think you wish you knew earlier.
Oh yeah, what do you wish you had done that would have made it easier for you?
I'm always the first to hop in, but I would have set up way more coffee chats with people who lived in DC already. Coffee chats meaning just 30-minute Zoom conversations, or if you're going to DC, messaging people ahead of time on LinkedIn. Before COVID, when I was in DC, a lot of App students would message me on Facebook before LinkedIn was really a thing, and ask if we could grab coffee during the workday. So I would definitely do those 30-minute coffee chats and just ask your questions that you are holding on to or wouldn't feel comfortable asking, in front of a bunch of other people. Because I think, I don't live in DC anymore, but I think I can speak for most of App people in DC that they would be willing to take time out of their day to talk to any students. And I didn't do that enough.
I think just something that I know helps me, and you're already taking advantage of it now, is one of the best resources you have is in that room with you, and that's Susan McCracken. So yeah, you're already setting yourself up for success there.
Yeah, I was literally going to say that. I was saying doing stuff like this, where you're able to be in the room and you get to see other people that are actually doing it, graduated from AppState, and they're in DC now. And also Susan. Susan's great.
Thank you.
I would just retweet everything that Madeline said and reemphasize everything else that everyone else said. The only thing I would add, and this could just be a me thing, but I knew like I wanted to have the best of both worlds. I wanted to have like one foot in North Carolina, one foot in DC. And just talking to like so many people throughout, they kind of like told me that like they didn't like outright say it was a bad idea or that it was unrealistic. They said it was harder. And I kept like doing like mental gymnastics in my head to tell myself that it would somehow work out. Because I even drove to DC for an interview only to not get it and drive 6 hours back, rejected. So I would like just if you have many interests, like I think the only thing I would do is I know that I was fortunate and another scenario, if I hadn't planned more ahead, I should have probably moved straight after graduation instead of waiting a month. Because I mean, I had already forfeited a lot of summer internship opportunities by thinking that I was magically going to have opportunities by doing them on Zoom interviews. It's just hard to make an impression.
I think the one thing I would add, specifically for jobs on the Hill, is to use your connections and to reach out to people and ask about offices you're applying to. I got really lucky with both offices I've worked in and have had great experiences. But I think there's a general understanding that on both sides of the aisle, there are some offices you might not want to apply to, depending on what you're looking for in a role. So just learning about that. And it's hard to be picky with your first internship, but if you're looking for maybe a first job, there are already going to be more opportunities if you're already on the Hill. So just be cognizant of who you're, and not even in a bad way, but certain offices have certain expectations of working hours or off-duty responsibilities and stuff like that. So just keep yourself informed.
Great advice.
Also, one more thing I want to say is even when you're interning, to make sure the member you're working for is someone you actually genuinely believe in or you're on the same page with the issues, because it's a lot of long hours, whether it be an internship or a full-time job. There's not much of a work-life balance. So you want to make sure that you're at least your views are aligned, because if not, it's going to be miserable.
And I would also echo that to say, even if you're not working for a member of Congress, if you're working for an organization, you want to also make sure that's the organization that you align with. Obviously not, you don't have to fully believe in every single thing, but this is going to be on your resume forever. And you're going to have to explain where it is that you worked. So you want to make sure that it's something that you will be proud of later. And then I would also say that like something we don't talk about a lot is I got like 50 plus rejections when I was a senior at App, if not more. And I think I only had like 2 offers out of like the 70 places I applied, which is fine. Like it's okay to be rejected from these places, and you will be. But you just have to keep just sending your application out there and talking to people as much as you can.
So Tommy, I wanted to sort of ask a directed question to you, because you made the leap. Well, you made lots of leaps: barista, intern, but you went from being on the Hill to working with an association. Was it a plus or a minus that you were on the Hill? And are there any, now that you're sort of the senior member here in that kind of role, any tips that you have about like doing the real political thing and then trying to make the jump into a non-political or a less political, because now your only politics is that of your employer. Now,
right. Yeah, the Hill experience definitely helps. I keep joking that I kind of got to cash in on that experience, because when you're on the Hill, you're in the trenches, you're not making as much money as you should. You don't even have time to think about it like that either. So people always joke that when you make the leap off the Hill, you actually get to be paid for your work you're putting in. No, it really did help a lot. I just always think the biggest thing is make sure your resume is telling a story. And I was able to advocate for myself for why I was the right fit for Aerospace Industries Association based on the trajectory I took to that point. Because a lot of what you're seeing on here in this panel is the success stories of a lot of hard work that was put in. Like Madeline said, all of us had a bunch of rejections. So it's kind of funny the past few years when I've been asked at coffee and how did you make it? Because I totally was on the other end of that, trying to figure out the right path. So we all have our own unique ways of getting to where we are now. But the one thing too about making the leap off the Hill, another thing that really, besides the money being nice and more of a work-life balance, is I wanted to work for our CEO, Eric Fanning, who was the first openly gay Secretary of the Army. And having that personal touch too, like I want to work here for these reasons, but also this leader is a personal hero of mine and that type of thing. They really like those personal tidbits more so than just, you know, I'm driven and I want to get this job to further my career. So I think just whatever unique story you can add or, you know, point to make, I think throw that in.
And Kadima, thank you, Tommy. I have a direct question for you, Kadima. You did the temp thing. So can you talk a little bit about even just getting on as a temp and then how that led you to the permanent role that you have now? And promotion recently.
Yeah, well, I didn't start as a temp, but I did have, I worked for like a government contractor. So I didn't.
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so I worked operations for a government contractor for, I want to say, a little over 2 years before I found my federal position. So my background again was in finance and economics. So I was like I guess you could say I was like a project manager at the time. I was kind of just overseeing all the projects that they were working on with the different agencies and just kind of making sure that money was flowing the way it was supposed to. And how I ended up leaving that position during COVID. And it just kind of was honestly luck of the draw that I found my next position here at the Library of Congress. It was kind of like I had to go back into that mentality that I was in my senior year, where I was just like applying like all the time, like, you know, just trying to stay connected with whoever I knew that was here and, you know, reach out to a lot of people. And I ended up, working with the budget office now. My budget officer's son actually graduated from App. And that was one thing that he saw on my resume. He was like, oh, you're from App State, like, go football. I was like, yeah, football. You know? No, I did. Like, I went to the games, but I was never truly invested. But he was just, he loved it. He was so happy. And that was like kind of the connection that I made coming in. And I did get a promotion recently. So now I'm formulation lead. So I'm basically the person that helped put our budget together to submit to Congress. I was literally there today turning in budgets to the Appropriations Committee. So it was a cool transition. Yeah, it was a cool transition. I would say it kind of was like a leap of faith for me, because when I was working for the contractor, it was a good job as far as like, it really got me the experience I needed. I really had to grind while I was there. It was kind of like what Tom was saying earlier, like, you know, you're not really making as much, your work-life balance really isn't there, and you're not really getting, you know, kind of like compensated for a lot of the hard work that you do. And it kind of just gave me that, you know, grind that gave me like kind of like what I needed to take into the library now. And I can say that it definitely helped me transition better into my position now.
Awesome. Other questions from the audience? Cindy, do you have one?
Yeah, actually, so I think this is more of a question for those who don't have like a political science degree or minor or major. As a mathematics major, I debated whether or not I could go into like politics and do that, just because I was a little discouraged from it, just because of the classes I've taken already. They don't really seem to align with any politics sort of thing. So I was just wondering how much is like non-political science stuff incorporated within what you're doing.
You'd be surprised how popular it was on my applications. Even if I didn't get a job, the first question I typically got was, why are you here instead of making money in the private sector doing math? Literally, I got that question probably 10 times. I've found that people generally have an understanding that as long as you have an interest in politics, you can learn about it and be able to work in the space, and that the mathematics degree or whatever other degree you might have is just another tangible skill that you can bring and use to help the office and to help your senator or member or nonprofit. You know, for me, something I do on the day-to-day, which I didn't think I would be doing, but that I learned at App, was programming Excel sheets or sort of more statistical data analysis type. Even if it's not necessarily in my job description, everybody in the office knows that I sort of have a knack for numbers, so they come to me. I mean, I sometimes do simple addition, which my office could easily do, but they're like, you studied math, so here are some numbers that you can add.
Oh my God.
So it comes in handy, and I have never found it to be hindering in any way. You just have to be able to show and formulate in your own words to the hiring manager or whoever is hiring you that you can make it work. But that's for anything.
And I think if I can jump in, I mean, one of the things we talk to students a lot about is very few people get a job just because of their major, unless you're an accountant or a nurse or occupational therapy. It's these experiences you have. And Ardashir, I loved how you talked about being an RA. I mean, I've never really thought about it, but being an RA is just like being in LA up there, right? It is 24/7. There are fires you are putting out all day long, and you're troubleshooting, and you're dealing with wild ranges of emotion.
Conflict management.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's those experiences, and y'all are so early in your career here. The opportunity to do these state government internships, local government internships are huge. So, I'm so thrilled
You
y'all
can
came
build
today.
it. You can intentionally build your resume instead
Yes.
of doing all the things and then trying to paint the picture with what you've done. You get to sort of choose the colors and what you're painting now.
So Chris, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do actually. So all of y'all seem like you have a lot of experience, and it's all of everything that y'all said is very impressive. What is something that you wish that you could change about your time in Appalachian?
Nothing.
I wouldn't change a thing.
Oh,
Okay.
we're putting you on the alumni commercial.
I would just not have COVID happen during a junior year and permeate to this day.
Yeah.
But that is all.
Yeah.
I think I would probably use the services on campus a little bit more, like the Career Center and other like networking opportunities. Susan was a huge resource, but pretty much my only app resource that I used and became friends with, which I probably should have done that more looking back. But, and then also now like staying in touch, I really, a lot of people still stay in touch with a lot of people at app, but really Susan's the person I stay in touch with. And if I had made, deeper connections in some of the campus services, I probably would have still had people there I could have stayed connected to a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't think I would really change anything. I mean, just thinking maybe personal preference would have been to stay the extra year to do my MPA and get the Master's of Public Administration, just because it was like that +1 program. But considering that I didn't do that and I'm still where I am, I think I'm okay.
So you and Ardashir can go over to GW and work on your master's and PhDs together.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about networking, because what I'd like to know is, so the other thing, sort of connection, Tommy mentioned working for Cinder Carper, and Cinder Carper's wife is from Watauga County. Cinder Carper is like best buds with another Appalachian alum who's now head of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. So like these connections are just crazy, and they're so fascinating. So what I'd like to know, or what I'd like to ask y'all is, and Ardashir, I think that you have a unique hobby that may have connected you to some of your opportunities, but I'd like y'all to talk about sort of the most kind of, I don't know, serendipitous, bizarre, strange networking experience you've had in DC or before you got there that led to some type of opportunity for you, whether it was a place to live, and we're going to get to that before we wrap up.
Honestly, I think the funny story about Sarah Bolton being such a good resource was not only was she someone I ended up looking up to, being such a powerful person on the Hill, but when I applied to Senator Cantwell's internship, it said Senior Pacific Northwest Senator female pronouns. So I was like, oh, it's Patty Murray. So in the cover letter, I am like hyping up, gassing up Patty Murray. In this cover letter, I'm like the mom in tennis shoes, all this stuff. It was not for Patty Murray, it's for Maria Cantwell. So I found out I got the first interview because Sarah had sent my resume to the office manager for Maria Cantwell, and I did the rest, but it definitely could have been a hard.
She totally saved you.
Oh yeah, for sure. So that was probably the most serendipitous / funny.
Since I was called out in the question, I will go next. Of course, networking. I mean, for me, it's a necessary evil. I hate the traditional form of networking, randomly asking people on LinkedIn to get coffee, but everybody is at least acceptable to the idea, and most people are more than willing to sit down and help you. You know, a couple random connections, of course, through SGA and just being at App at the same time. Michael was a great help when I first came here. I had no place to live, and I was literally considering either staying with my cousin in Northern Maryland or just pitching a tent somewhere in the woods. And Michael gave me my first apartment. And so that's where I lived for the first 4 months I was here. The random connection, which I bet is a large reason why I'm in the job I am now, is that I was a collegiate mountain biker, and Ben Ray Lujan is a big time mountain biker. And it was his first question for me in my interview with him, what bike I rode and what were my favorite types of trails. So really random things come up, and I knew he was a mountain biker, so it's something I had thought might come in handy, but do your research. And those weird small connections typically are things that people pick up on. So don't be afraid to use them and leverage them to get yourself into the door.
Yeah, I'll just say that I miss having Ardashir as my downstairs neighbor. But no, it's definitely like one thing I've noticed just from like interviewing, just like, I mean, not interviewing for big positions, just for internships, is just like how many people like, it's like sad how many people have barely even like researched anything. Like they like going to Wikipedia for the member 5 minutes for the interview would yield a more like don't even know the committees that the members on, couldn't even like say a fact about them or like why they wanted to work for them. It's almost like they just showed up to a random Zoom link on their thing. And so just like doing that with a little bit of like preparation, just like having those things, like and be able to like, I hate to use this term, but be able to like talk intelligently about the subject, like honestly can like set you apart, which is kind of sad, but it's just, it is.
Oh yeah, that's so basic, and so many people don't do it, don't have any idea. Madeline, Kadima.
Yeah, I don't really have a random story, but I think what helped me is focusing on the like identities that you have and finding people with similar identities in DC. So I identify as, I'm in the LGBTQ community. That just like narrowed my search of people in DC for who are also in the queer community. And obviously, you know, talk to anybody you can, but I think if, you know, it's always easier to have that common point of identity with somebody else to start the conversation and then, you know, go into the more formal networking. I think I also really hate the traditional networking, what do you do questions. They're just like, especially post-COVID, it just seems silly sometimes. So I think trying to make a connection with people on something personal before you dive into the what do you do, how do I get this job, is always preferred. And those are the kind of conversations that I would want to have with college students now before we just dive into the work stuff.
May I summarize and say that would be more relational than transactional? Yeah. Which is what scares a lot of students about networking. You think, oh, I'm going to ask for something, but it doesn't have to be that way at all. You actually have plenty of information and things to offer as well.
Yeah, and I think people are more likely to help you out if they find a connection with you on a different level than just professional. I know I'd be more willing to help people out if we had a connection over a TV show that we liked or anything, you know, our favorite food. Like it can seem kind of silly, but I think when you can, you know, then I remember you as the person that we talked about how much we love whatever. housewives. Before, we talked about work.
And in general with networking, to that point, just be genuine. I think a lot of people, I've had a couple coffees where people were very to the point and were very clearly there for some form of transactional relationship. How can you get me an internship? And it's much easier if you just go in with an open mind and really want to get to know someone. More often than not, that's more helpful than saying, listen, I know you hire interns, can you hire me? So just be genuine with yourself and it'll be better.
I don't have any unique, I guess, networking story. I mean, outside of my budget officer's son going to App, that's probably like the closest I've got. I mean, I've had some encounters with other people in my sorority, and that's kind of been a connection. That's actually how I found my apartment. A church that I go to, I met a soror there, and then she introduced me to another soror that was looking for a tenant. So that's kind of how it worked for me. It's not directly through App, but it is because of App that I became a member of my organization. So I guess that would work.
Yeah, well, and that's a great segue to the last question that I have before we wrap up. And that is, talk about like, where in the world do you live? I do know one, Kadima just mentioned, her Greek organization, her sorority, and there are students here who've stayed at GW or Georgetown in the fraternity or sorority house of their group, from here, because there was a chapter there. There's an organization called WISH, Washington Intern Student Housing. Madeline lived there one summer. Tommy, you never lived there, did you? Nope.
Y'all famously got rid of the AppState house right before I moved up here that summer. Because remember, Chancellor Everett was like, "You're not going to be homeless," and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
So
yeah, the university used to have a facility, a house like we have in DC where we have the loft, but that has been gone for a while. But talk about, because that's a hard thing, maybe or maybe not, because so many people have left the city. Is it easier now? It's crazy expensive, but yeah, any tips on even just summer housing if students were to go for an internship, not even thinking long term? Or any of y'all looking for roommates this summer? Just teasing. Michael might be. It seems like that worked for him.
I just re-signed a 1-year lease, so I at least have that taken care of. But no, I think the most important part, and this is more geared if you're like coming up here full time, internship is a little bit different, but like because you at least have like a set like term limit. But like, do not go to this is just my 2 cents. Do not go to Zillow or apartments.com. I would stay on the Facebook group, because most places on Zillow or apartments.com are going to lock you in for 6 months to a year. And I mean, I didn't even know if I was going to make it 3 or 4 months up here. And on the Facebook group, you can find a lot of people that are like kind of leaving, willing to do 1 month free, like have a lot of flexibility, and you can kind of like get like you can like arrange to like FaceTime with them and like get to know them before you live with them, and it's a lot more flexible. Because I know I came up here, I like, and the landlord that I'm connecting Ardashir with did like I did a 3-month lease, and then I ended up living where I do now, because there are a lot of people that kind of get boxed in and they signed a 1-year lease, and the only thing worse than signing a 1-year lease, being unpaid internship, is paying for it when you've even left DC and you can't get anybody to take it.
Yeah, I think the Facebook groups, I did live in Wish, and I think it was great. I mean, Susan organized pretty much all of that for our group. We had like 10 App people who stayed in a house our summer through Wish, but that's only if you want to do a summer internship. I mean, when I first moved to DC, for my job, I just lived in a really shitty apartment for a year, and it's kind of like a rite of passage to move to DC. I mean, no, I don't want anybody to like have to live in a shitty apartment, but I think it's just kind of, I'm sure most of us on the panel have had an unfortunate housing situation in DC. And I don't know what it's like now, because I left DC a couple months ago, but finding roommates who you have something in common with. probably through Facebook, or I guess now like Instagram or even LinkedIn. I don't know if that works.
Yeah, I also found my first living arrangement through a Facebook group. And then I eventually left that apartment, and I have an aunt. She's like, not like my parents like siblings, but like my parents' siblings. So she's like kind of down the line in my family, but she lives up here, and I was able to like stay with her for a few months before I found my shitty apartment. And then I moved out, and now I'm living where I'm at in Alexandria. But definitely somewhere to start would be the Facebook groups, or Wish if you can.
So just be honest to yourself with what you're looking for. It's gonna be worse than Boone regardless, strictly on a cost to, assessment. I don't know. It's gonna be expensive. So be willing to be reasonable with yourself and what you want. I mean, I think I'm in that 1 year window right now. I live in a fine place, but it's a windowless basement. So, that's not great always, but I don't pay as much as a lot of people. But Facebook, friends, they might help as well. I found this place just walking around neighborhoods since I was already in DC. A lot of older people just don't want to deal with technology and put out traditional signs in their yards. So that's also a thing you could consider. And those tend to be cheaper too.
I would tell y'all how much my apartment is, but I don't want to scare y'all from coming to DC because it's pretty bad how expensive it is here.
Great.
I'll also say, sorry, really fast, that the Facebook groups, there are groups, again, there's like a queer housing group, there's a Black housing group, like there's different groups that if you feel comfortable living with different people or certain people, that there are different groups on Facebook where you can look if you are looking for roommates that you can identify with. Just plugging that too.
That's awesome. Gosh, y'all been awesome. It's so good to see you. So I guess just in close, I want to thank our panelists. They are, to the students in the room, they are like amazing people. And for some of them, I've known them like 6 years. Tommy's almost 7, probably 7. And others I haven't known as long, but we stay in touch. And I can honestly say they would do anything to help you get your feet on the ground. And you're so lucky to have that. And I really encourage y'all to take advantage of that and follow up. For those of you who are already connected on LinkedIn, kudos, that's awesome. We're gonna have you come do a LinkedIn workshop for other students. And for our folks on the screen, and Madeline, you out there on the West Coast, thank you so much. I'll be following up with y'all, and thank you for letting us record. I actually didn't fully ask your permission. I just did it. So I hope y'all are okay with that. I will share it with the students who weren't here. We'll probably put it up on our YouTube. Last year we recorded everything, and then this year I feel like we get started and I totally forget about it because we've got so many other moving parts. But any parting words of wisdom that y'all have to share?
I was just gonna say, don't be discouraged, like we've all talked about, there were a lot of no's before we got any yeses. So if it's really something that you want, just keep working at it and it's gonna come to you.
Yeah, just stick with it. I mean, you can't teach grit, but if you have grit and you have motivation and you keep with it and you don't give up, I promise you it'll pay off at the end. There might be times, definitely at times for myself, where I felt like maybe I should call it quits, but I'm glad I was persistent because it really does pay off here and people recognize that.
Last thing for me, it's sort of housekeeping. Since I hopped on the panel late, Susan, I'm not sure if my information went out, but if you have it, feel free to send it out. If not, I'm more than happy to provide it. And speaking for myself, and feel free to the people in the room to reach out to me or request connections on LinkedIn or however I can help, and just let me know.
That'd be great. And I will send it out to everybody again. Thanks, Arshia.
Yeah, feel free to message on LinkedIn or I don't know if emails are going out, but I'm happy to always chat. I was in DC for 5 years and now I'm in Los Angeles. So there's also people interested in the West Coast. Happy to chat with them as well.
Yeah, I would just like emphasize the discouraged thing. I mean, you are going to get discouraged, and people told me to not get discouraged, and I did. But I think you just kind of, I did have those moments where I was like, what am I doing with my life? But I think definitely if you have the right mindset or like are really passionate about it, it's more a matter of if rather than, I mean, a matter of when rather than if. So I think those are just things to keep in mind, and feel free to reach out if you want to learn more.
Great. Well, thank you, stellar, amazing alumni. Really appreciate it. Hope to see y'all in person. Tried to see a couple of you in January and the 10 inches of snow prevented that, but hopefully I'll be back up soon. So anyway, so we'll see y'all later. Come see us when you're
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you, y'all.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye. Great. All right. Yay, that actually worked for everything, I think. Let's get this stuff.